SEO is a beast of its own. As a developer, you should take every step to make sure your theme is SEO ready and is compatible with most SEO plugins. There are dozens of them out there. Throughout this course, we've prepared the theme to be SEO ready, but we can definitely take it a step further. Right now, I'm on a site called Schema.org. I'll provide a link in the resource section of this lecture. Schema is a way to tell bots and crawlers more about the content on your site. Currently, if a crawler, like Google's crawler, were to read through our HTML, it would have to guess what kind of content is being read. Google's algorithm is smart enough to be able to sort through all the HTML and make good guesses. However, we can help. This is where microdata comes into play. You can add attributes to certain tags to let the crawlers and bots know what they're looking at and decide how important the content is. Most SEO plugins will assist you by adding some microdata for you, but there are just some sections it can't reach. So it's our job to cover those missing spots. This site will provide you everything you need to know about microdata. If you go to the documentation, you'll find a link for getting started. We won't be going over every little thing. I'll just cover the main points. It isn't that hard. Microdata is just a fancy word for a few set of specific HTML attributes that specify what kind of content a bot or crawler is viewing. The first attribute you'll use is called the item scope. Just by including this attribute, you're specifying that the HTML element contains information about something. The next property is the item type, where the value of this attribute is a URL to where more information about this element can be found. The URL must point to schema.org and to the appropriate page. We'll talk more about these URLs and how you would go about setting them. The last property is item prop, which is an attribute you set to specify how the element is related to the item type. It gives you the ability to fully describe the content. These three attributes are the attributes you'll use the most when adding microdata to your templates. It may seem kind of confusing at first, but you'll get the hang of it once you start adding them. Let's start using them. On the Schema site, I want you to click on the Schemas link. You'll be taken to a page where you can view certain types or view the full list. I'm going to view the full list. On this page, you'll see the full hierarchy of types you can select. When you get started with microdata, the very first thing you want to do is think about what type you want to set. In general, your website is a type of data. That sounds weird, but just go with me on this. If you look around, you'll find a type called web page. Click on this. Here is what Schema has to say about this type. Every web page is implicitly assumed to be declared to be of type web page, so the various properties about that web page, such as breadcrumb, may be used. We recommend explicit declaration if these properties are specified, but if they are found outside of an item scope, they will be assumed to be about the page. We really don't have to set this type, but I believe it's a good example when it comes to getting started with microdata. I want you to open the header file from our theme. Search for the opening body tag and apply the item scope attribute. This is the first step. By applying this attribute, you're telling the crawler that this element contains information the crawler should be aware of. The next attribute you need to set is the item type attribute. The value of this attribute is the URL to that type. This is an important step. As I stated previously, it must be a URL to where more information can be found about that type. The URL is the full URL http://schema.org followed by the type. You can also just copy and paste the URL you find here. It's important to understand that only URLs to the schema.org site are allowed. All other sites will just be ignored. The bot will see this and then look at the URL for reference. By looking at this page, it'll understand what kind of properties you can set and what it can expect to look for when it's scanning all the children elements. That's the basics of it. There is one more attribute, but I want to use that in another example. It's perfectly fine to specify a type and no properties. I'll expand more on this later, but let's move on to the next example. Open the single template and search for the author box. This element contains information about the author. It would be ideal to apply some microdata to it. Just like the last element, we need to decide on the type. If you look through the list, you'll eventually find an item called person. Let's use this. Inside the template, add the item scope and item type attributes. Copy and paste the URL as the value for the type. This time I want to specify more information. If you look through this documentation, you'll find all the properties we can set for this type. One of these is name. Every person has a name and our author box displays the author's name. To apply a property, you have to use the item prop attribute. Apply this attribute to the span tag which encompasses the name. Then set its value to name. We're only going to apply this property. You are more than free to apply more properties. You'll also notice that we have a type on the body tag and a type for this element which is inside the body tag. This is perfectly allowed. Types can have types inside them. To reiterate what's going on, when search engines scan this page, they will eventually come upon this element. Upon scanning it, it'll find the attribute item scope telling it that the developer is specifying what kind of information is inside this element. It'll then look for a type, which in this case is person. It'll then search through the properties for this type. This is how you would go about using microdata. So far, we've used only the web page and person types, but there are dozens of them on this page. Some are even children of certain ones. For example, the type thing is the parent of all these types, including web page and person. If we look at the web page type, you can see we can get even more specific with the type by saying the page is an about page or contact page type. The more specific you are, the better. I'm going to give some closing thoughts. Adding microdata is absolutely not required. You'll find that a lot of sites don't use microdata. It's more or less a way to help search engines better understand a page. If you forget to add microdata to a comment or to an article, then that's fine. Search engines will still scan the elements and try to understand the content on its own. These attributes are just a way to help it better understand your content without having to guess. If you're having trouble using microdata, I highly recommend you work with an SEO specialist and work together to maximize the SEO of your theme. To test your snippets, you can go to the Structured Data Testing tool from Google. I'll provide a link to this in the resource section of this lecture. You just paste in a URL or just paste in a small snippet of code and Google will tell you how it reads that data. Since we're on a local server, we really can't test it. That basically sums up microdata and how to use them. I highly encourage that you read the documentation to learn more about what you can do with microdata.